Oh boy, it's almost time. Hey, Chud Logic. What's up, buddy? Have to make another announcement. Links to the streams. All right, made the announcement. Cool. You got a lot of people coming into the server. Hope the senior officers can handle the volume of people coming in. It's kind of insane, but kind of to be expected at the same time, because this always happens right before AMAs, although not quite to this extent. I might decrease the speed limit a little bit, as maybe 75 appropriate. 99 might be a bit much. We were easily able to handle like 60 last 75. Good, Ben's AMA watching channel. I just realized everyone was like muted. I was like saying hello to people and stuff, and you guys were muted. You guys don't need to mute already.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. I thought that was the thing you were doing. It's all good.
No, I just absent-minded sometimes. I've got a lot on my mind since this is supposed to start in a few minutes. Chomsky is in the server, if you haven't noticed.
How you feeling? How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. Slightly
Good.
nervous, but I'm more excited than nervous. The good outweighs the bad, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've not even announced it on Twitter and Discord yet, and I've already got 46 viewers, so it's yeah. But they're silenced at the moment, so they can't hear us. So sorry, Mr. Sunday.
some technical difficulties, but he should be here shortly.
I mean, that's understandable. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's fine. Not a big deal. Oh, hey, Timber. We're just waiting on Chomsky right now. That AMA watching channel is filling up.
Yeah, give me a sec.
Are you emailing him?
Yeah, kind of, and also God fucking damn it, these old people, Jesus. Bro, you can't say that.
Don't be ageist. Sorry for the wait, everyone, but it'll be worth the wait when it gets here.
Shiny, did you make sure that he can actually click on this voice channel?
Yeah.
He has permission?
Oh,
Okay.
wait a second. Oh, that might be my mistake.
Oh,
Jesus Christ. Okay,
Jesus.
now it's fixed. Sorry about that.
When we thought the old person was Chomsky, but all along it
Turns
was
out
Steven.
I was the old person the whole time. Yikes. We're off to a good start. Yeah, now you can definitely see the channel though. Oh, he's here. Cool. Hello, Professor Chomsky.
Hi, Professor Chomsky. Can you hear us? So if you just click the unmute button, which is on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, there should be like headphone sign. Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah,
this is-
great to have you. Sorry for the troubles, I guess.
yeah,
Um,
so what happens now?
yeah, so what
Alright,
we'll do is we'll
you can
just
explain.
so you see all the questions, the AMA questions, in the if you click on the tab that says AMA questions, you should see like a big list of questions. We'll just read them to you, and you can sort of respond. But we'll stop whenever you want to stop. We stop.
Okay, now what do you want me to do now?
Oh, so right now you don't have to do anything. We'll just read you the questions, and then after you
I can
after
just
we read,
read the questions,
huh?
and then sorry, you will read the questions, and then I
Yeah.
will respond.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So socialism done left. You can take over.
Sure. So thank you for being here, Professor Chomsky. Just as an opening question, I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
what is the most important thing for people to do right now to make a socialist future more likely?
Well, we have two crucial issues that have to be faced, or else everything else becomes moot. One issue is the global warming. Unless we solve this problem and quickly, everything else is irrelevant. We have a short period of time, maybe a decade or two, to deal with this. And if we don't manage, we can say goodbye to each other. Not immediately, but we will pass probably irreversible tipping points. The second problem is the increasing threat of nuclear war. Very serious, increasing. Things can be done, but unless they're done, our chances of survival are very slight. There are other crucial problems, but these are the overwhelming ones. Unless there are quick, effective answers to these, nothing else is going to matter. We know the answers. They have to be implemented.
Thank you for that answer. Shiny, did you want to ask the second question?
Yeah, sure. We can move on to the second question. Was this a voice question or was this okay, yeah, this is a voice question. So we're going to unmute El Kong, and we'll let him ask his question in voice chat. El Kong, you're unmuted.
Yeah. Hello, Professor Chomsky. You guys can hear me, right?
I heard you, but I didn't understand.
Oh, sorry. I might be speaking a little bit too quickly. Okay. Hello, Professor Chomsky. Thank you for being here today and being willing to take my question, which is in regard to the United States elections. So, while polls may vary, it seems clear that the Republican Party at large has abandoned much of the conventions of democracy, science, and any sense of moderation, and that most of their members have followed suit. What can the left do to change or alleviate this current state of affairs, where a good portion of the country doesn't believe election results, science, or democracy?
There are no magic keys. There are only the methods that we know, which can be applied, which are slow, which have worked in the past and can work now. But the main problem is, in the broad sense, education. Interacting with people, finding a common base. There always is some common base. Proceeding from there, trying to bring them to face the kind of reality that they're closing their minds to. We should also be considering the circumstances that lead to these irrational and self-destructive behaviors, trying to correct them. Beyond that, we can try to organize as broadly as we can, carry out the kinds of activism that are effective and successful. There are no other methods. These are the methods that are available, that have worked in the past. We just have to carry them out more effectively, sympathetically with others, more energetically, and achieve what we can.
Thank you for that. The third question comes from Venbot361, who I've unmuted. Venbot was going to ask about the Biden administration. Venbot, can you speak?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
So hi, Professor Chomsky. Thank you for being here. My question was, how should leftists and progressives in general tackle the incoming Biden administration?
The Biden administration on its own is very likely to be essentially a Clintonite, Obama-style administration. Wall Street-oriented, donor-oriented, very little concern for the general public. But they can be pressed. It's already happened. So activists working with people in the Biden administration have succeeded in pushing their program farther towards the aggressive side than any in recent memory. They're not going to act on that program unless they're pressed. And they can be pressed. That's what we have to do. And they can be pushed further. So take, for example, the most important question, how to deal with the crisis of impending environmental catastrophe. Under pressure from Sunrise Movement and others, formal Biden-Harris program was not enough, but it was not too bad, certainly better than anything that preceded. The DNC, Democratic National Committee, was resisting it all the way, sometimes even took their program off their web page. So there's clearly an internal struggle going on about this. We can lend our weight as activists, as pressure groups, as writers, as participants to try to push the program towards something reasonable enough to offer us a serious chance of escaping this catastrophe. And the same is true on other issues. So today they passed a so-called stimulus program. Actually, we don't have the details yet, but what is leaking out seems to be that they did pass the McConnell-Trump favorite, ensuring tax write-offs for 3 martini lunches for executives, but a very small amount for individuals and nothing, it seems, for the desperately needed programs for states and localities. Well, these are things that can be changed. Pressure on the Democrats should be extensive to try to get them to move to a more humane program, which will not only be better for people, it will help salvage the crashing economy. That can be done, but you have to press them constantly. What happened after Obama was elected is a very good lesson. Obama had a huge army of mostly young activists supporting him. As soon as he was elected, he disbanded them. What he cared about was being elected, not achieving anything for the public afterwards. That betrayal was well understood, and it's part of the background for the vote for Trump. Well, we shouldn't allow that to happen again.
Okay. Thank you for your answer there. We'll go next to President Sunday. President Sunday had a question. President Sunday, you there? I think you should already be unmuted. Unless I have to
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Well, the first thing we have to bear in mind is that the United States is a very unusual country. I can't think of any other country apart from dictatorships, right-wing dictatorships, where the word socialism is considered to have it's impossible to use. Other countries, pretty much like ours, somebody says he's a socialist, that's like saying he's a Democrat. That's an innocuous term. In the United States, which is a deeply ideological, highly rigid culture, the term is almost unusable. And you're quite right about the other terms. The other terms have almost lost meaning. So what can we do about it? Oh, we have to face reality, be sensitive to what's in people's minds. Can't just say, I'm a socialist without explaining what you mean, because the automatic reaction in the United States, apart from the rest of the world, is that if you say I'm a socialist, you're saying I'm in favor of the gulag, I'm in favor of the Chinese famine, and so on. That's a special fact about the United States. We happen to live here. You can't overlook it. It doesn't mean that we should accept this destruction of all political terminology. As Orwell and others pointed out, one of the ways to control and dominate people is to make discussion impossible. And that one of the ways to do that is to eviscerate the terminology of discussion from substantive meaning. So what we can do is proceed carefully and uh, with sympathy and understanding to explain what the terms actually mean, the way we're using them, what they mean, and why other people should, if they agree with these ideas, as they usually do, join with us in working for them. It's a slow process, but straightforward, and there's no other methods.
Thank you for that answer. The next question comes from Osfox, and it is about language.
Hey, so again, thank you for coming, Chomsky. What I'm wondering about is because obviously during your career, you've been a very strong proponent of nativist linguistics, and you're even cited by a lot of people as being one of the driving factors for it essentially having such a strong foothold in both linguistics and now other areas like psychology. I'm just wondering, what would your easy, digestible answer be to someone saying that they disagree with nativism? being a nativist in view? And also, what do you think is the strongest critique of this way of thinking, like of being a nativist, that is?
Well, to be a nativist is just to be quasi-rational. If you think there's a difference between the language capacity of a human being and, say, a dog or a tree or something else, then you're a nativist. Nativists are saying there's something special about human beings and their biological endowment, which enables them to do what you and I are now doing. It's not true of other organisms. They don't have that capacity. So either it's magic or it's part of our biological endowment. It's part of our biological endowment. You're a nativist. The only serious question is, what is this biological endowment? What is it that makes it possible for an infant to almost reflexively acquire the capacities that we're now using within, by the time the infant is 2 or 3 years old and has mastered most of the fundamentals of the language? What is the biological property that makes that possible for a human infant? Whereas if you take, say, our nearest relatives, higher apes, even with the most extensive training and long efforts, you cannot elicit anything, even the rudiments of this capacity, the most elementary rudiments. So again, either it's magic or it's because of some biological endowment, same kind of biological endowment that goes into other aspects of growth and development. And the question is, what is that? There really isn't any question about nativism any more than there is about why you have arms and legs, not wings. That's obvious. It's a biological endowment. The questions are, what is it? And here there's a lot of substantive work.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
To follow up on an earlier thing you were asked, I'm just wondering specifically, because you mentioned climate change being the most, like essentially one of the most pressing issues facing us, but you're also obviously not a full revolutionary. I'm just wondering, do you think that the level of reform that you advocate for and more democratic socialists advocate for is enough to actually get us over the line of climate change, essentially not like, you know, killing a shit ton of people in the third world or whatever?
Well, again, we have to begin by facing a few realities. Take a look at the time scale relevant to overcoming the crisis of the environment and the time scale that would be required to substantially change the institutional structure of the society. I think the second should be done, and efforts towards it should never be abandoned. We should pursue them. But the time scale for dealing with the environment is much briefer than that. It has to be done basically within the framework of existing institutions while we proceed as best we can to improve and change those institutions. Now, it is, in fact, entirely feasible to deal with the imminent crisis of environmental catastrophe within the framework of existing institutions. There are detailed proposals as to how to do that. The best ones I know are proposed by my colleague and co-author, Robert Pollin, presented in some detail in a joint book of ours that just came out on Global Green New Deal. I think those proposals, which are already being in part implemented, are entirely feasible. They would require about maybe 2 to 3% of GDP, gross domestic product. It can be pursued within existing institutions in ways that do press them to their limits can be achieved and must be achieved if we are to survive. Beyond that come the questions of overcoming deep problems that are creating the fundamental threat of severe environmental catastrophe and many others. Much of that is just inherent in systems of unregulated markets and capital concentration. Those have to be dealt with, but that's a longer term project. Doesn't mean we abandon it now, we pursue it now, understanding that implementing the feasible measures to fend off environmental catastrophe must have priority.
Thank you for that answer. The next question, sorry. The next question comes from, I'll just say it, I guess. Next question comes from Pillowcase, who is in voice and wants to ask you about leftism rising in young people.
Hello, Professor Chomsky. Thank you so much for being here. My question is, there seems to be a resurgence of leftist thought among the younger people on the internet. They seem to support these beliefs without any foundation in any political philosophy or study. Do you think this could be damaging in the long run for leftist movements, or do you think that the raw increase in support for anti-capitalist movements is enough to be a positive force?
Well, you can never predict. It depends how people like you pursue these efforts. Can be done in a way which will turn it into something very positive and turn into something very harmful. All a matter of choice. Can't predict it. We know how to proceed, and it's up to, like you, to proceed in the constructive way. That'll give the answer.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for that question. Next, we're going to go to someone who is actually in the other channel right now. So let me move them in real quick. All right. I don't know how to pronounce their name exactly, but Tirike Bad FTHR. You want to ask your question? If you're there.
Hello, Dr. Chomsky. It's a pleasure to be able to
Your voice is a little low.
Oh, is it good now?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, Dr. Chomsky, it's a pleasure to be able to speak to you. So labor unions have historically been a major force for affecting positive social change for working class people. With public opinion of labor unions at an all-time high, how might we best take advantage of the public trust to promote a resurgence in unions' influence in society? Thank you.
You're quite right. Labor movements have been in the forefront ever since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, have been in the forefront of moving towards progressive social change, which is beneficial to the general population. And the business classes understand that very well. That's why they are constantly carrying out a bitter class war to try to destroy and undermine unions. It's extreme in the United States, where we happen to have an unusually class-conscious business class. It's been very striking for the last 40 years when they gained ascendancy in the political system with the neoliberal assault. Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, the people behind them understood this very well. And their first acts, when they introduced the neoliberal programs that we've been suffering under, their first acts were to attack and undermine labor unions. Reagan pressed it to the point where he even allowed scabs to break up strikes. That was illegal in every country in the world except for apartheid South Africa. Once that door was opened, corporations raced in and pursued the same tactics. And many, the Clintonites, assisted by their particular form of neoliberal globalization, which was designed to protect private power and undermine working people by setting them in competition with the poorest, most oppressed workers in the world, while giving enormous protections to concentrated private capital. That had a big effect. Others have carried it out further. But yes, there has been a concentrated attack on unions. Many mainstream economists, like Larry Summers, for example, have argued that the major factor in the extraordinary inequality that has developed during the neoliberal assault, that the major factor has been the undermining of the power, ability of working people to defend themselves, the destruction of unions. You can debate the details, but surely in general, it's largely correct. Very strongly in recent years, there has been a resurgence of the labor movement in interesting places. In red states, states without unionization, very right-wing administrations like West Virginia or Arizona, where I live. It's been headed by, at first, by teachers' strikes, which and they're very interesting strikes. These are non-unionized. In fact, the union can support them. Non-union workers, teachers, not just asking for improved salaries for themselves, though those are very much justified. They're seriously underpaid, but demanding better conditions for education, smaller classroom sizes, better reversal of the defunding of education, better facilities, better programs for children. That's what they're pressing for. They're getting enormous popular support. I can see it right where I live in Tucson, Arizona. Overwhelming support for the teacher strikes, even though it makes life difficult for the parents. Same in West Virginia. That's picked up elsewhere. Nurses strikes, other service workers, Amazon workers, that even has reached major corporations like a major General Motors strike. Well, I think those are signs that the labor movement can be revitalized and reverse this 40-year attack in an effort to destroy them and to eliminate the possibilities for working people to defend themselves. We should bear in mind what has happened to the working class and, in fact, the middle class during this neoliberal period. There was a recent estimate given by the Rand Corporation, very highly respected analysis, a corporation that carries out careful analyses of social and other programs. They estimated how much wealth has been transferred from the working class and the middle class to the super rich during the 40 neoliberal years. Their measure is lower 90% of the population. How much has been transferred from them to the ultra rich? Their estimate is $47 trillion. Not small change. It's a serious underestimate. It doesn't take into account the other measures that Reagan and his business managers instituted to open the spigot for robbery of the public, like tax havens, shell companies, a variety of other devices, which have robbed tens of trillions of dollars from the general public. That's quite apart from the efforts to destroy unions with those effects. It didn't go to the upper 10%. It went to the upper tiny fraction of that. So 0.1% of the population have doubled their share of wealth since Reagan, from 10% to a colossal 20%. That's what we've been living with. And those things have to be sharply reversed if we're going to have any form of viable society. This has been a catastrophe wherever neoliberal principles have been followed. Europe had its own version of them, in some ways even harsher. United Kingdom as well, all throughout the third world. Dramatic here. That's the reason for the primary reason for the anger, the resentment, the irrationality, the contempt for institutions that you see in much of the world. Those are problems that are fundamental and have to be addressed seriously.
Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. The next question comes from June Alpine, who can't speak at the moment. They ask, regarding your disapproval of the methods of Antifa as a movement, what actions do you think that Antifa should abandon or alter?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Could you repeat it?
Of course. June Lapine asks, regarding your disapproval of the methods of Antifa as a movement, what actions do you think that Antifa should abandon or alter?
Well, if you want to give a gift to the far right, then engage in violent activity. They love it. We can see that right before our eyes. The Trump campaign exploited that fringe of violence and destruction and turned it into their main talking points. What has succeeded in the past, can succeed today, are the nonviolent movements of protest. They've been quite effective. They can be effective. That's what Antifa should turn to. Self-defense is fine, but carrying out destructive actions, intimidating people, initiating violence, that's just a gift to the far right, which they absolutely adore.
All right. Thank you. Now, I think next we're going to move on to Chud Logic's question. Chud Logic, you there? Are you able to speak?
Hello. Yes, I'm able to speak.
All right. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, fantastic. Professor Chomsky, thank you. So what I wanted to ask is there's a number of right-wing media organizations that have become quite big, such as Daily Wire, Project Veritas, Daily Caller, Ben Shapiro, Stephen Crowder, etc. Often they will cite you and cite your work, Manufacturing Consent, and claim to stand against the liberal media establishment. What I was interested to understand is, how do you think these new right-wing organizations fit into your analysis of manufacturing consent?
Well, I have a proprietary interest in the concept manufacturing consent. My co-author, Herman, and I used it as the title of a book. Actually, we didn't make it up. We borrowed it from mainstream liberal democratic theory, which we documented has been in favor of what they called manufacturing consent. I happen to be quoting Walter Lippmann, but there are many others, in order to keep the population under control. As Lippmann put it, manufacture of consent is a new art in the practice of democracy to ensure that the general public remain spectators, not participants in action, leaving decision-making to the responsible men. people like us, the smart guys, not the stupid and ignorant majority. That's manufacture of consent. We then discussed how it's carried out in the media. But the book is not, the book actually, a large part of the book, if anybody starts to read it, tries to read it, going beyond the title, about a third of the book is defense of the media. Defense of the media against attacks from, in particular, Freedom House, which had a brutal, bitter attack on the media for not being patriotic enough and contributing to what they call the loss of the war in Vietnam. What we showed in detail is that the attacks were pure lies and deceit, that reporters were courageous, honest, described what they saw accurately, but within a framework of propaganda that shaped the way it was presented and perceived. So yes, let's describe the crimes and atrocities the military has carried out, but saying this is bad because it's harming our effort, our noble effort to bring democracy and freedom to Vietnam. Well, it wasn't that at all. So here we have media are doing their job accurately and honestly and courageously within a framework that is highly distorted. Leaves important things out, distorts others. And that's the way I think you have to look at the media. It has nothing to do with the kind of critique that you're referring to. If you want to understand the world, learn about the world, your best source you can begin with is the mainstream media. First thing I look at in the morning is the New York Times, Washington Post, Financial Times, Guardian, others. That's the main source of news and opinion, information. You have to read it with the understanding, critical understanding, that they are presenting the world within a certain framework which imposes its own presuppositions and distortions. You have to read it with critical intelligence, but it is the primary source of information and opinion.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that answer. The next question comes from Foucault Simp, who is currently unable to speak. They ask two related questions. First, how does manufacturing consent differ from something like Michael Parenti's Inventing Reality? And second, why do you support US electoral politics like advocating for Joe Biden or for Obama, especially when it seems like that feeds your idea of manufacturing consent?
Well, on the first question, Parenti's Inventing Reality is interesting work. It's kind of complementary to what we did. Our work was a close and detailed analysis of the practices of the major media, the liberal media, New York Times, CBS, and so on, and the mechanisms that lead to that. It's complementary to his discussion in many ways. As far as electoral politics is concerned, I didn't advocate voting for Biden. I've never advocated voting for anyone that I can think of. I voted for but I took the traditional left position, which seems to have been forgotten. Traditional left position is political life consists of constant activism. Every once in a while, an event comes along called an election, in which you take a few minutes to decide, is it worth participating in these proceedings? Is it worth taking off whatever time it takes to press a button? And almost always it's a matter of voting against. So in the last two elections, for example, I think it was very clear that it was quite important to take off whatever time it takes to vote against Trump, who is a major danger, even to survival. Climate policies alone make that obvious. So yes, we should take a few minutes to, or whatever time it takes, send in an absentee ballot or whatever, vote against Trump. And within our system, the method for voting against Trump is to press a button for the opposition party. Okay? That's, in my view, minimal sanity. Then get back to work in the ways we were discussing before, pressing the incumbents to live up to their promises and to go way beyond them. That's a return to political life. And that's, I think, the way we should look at electoral politics.
Okay. I think up next we're going to go to another slightly related question from Onan. Let me unmute Onan. Onan, you there?
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
All right.
Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I would assume that the question is kind of related. It's kind of regarding the prescriptive statements you would make. So, whenever we try to advocate for leftism, then we encounter this problem that people have these range of ideas in their head that they think is imaginable. And now I think we have two options. Either we can attempt to break this bubble and like set them up to new ideas, maybe talk about how socialism can not be USSR-like, maybe talk about radical change. But we also have another option, which is trying to lead them down the rabbit hole and get them one by one and being more moderate. And so I think we have kind of a dilemma here, which is that if we are not radical, then we leave them in a situation in which left-wing ideas seem still radical to them, because anything further cannot even be discussed. But if we try to be radical, we might scare them away. And I would like to know what you think is preferable and how we should handle this problem.
First of all, it depends on your audience. Who are you talking to? You're going to act differently if you're trying to engage with people who have a different perspective views. You have to adjust to that. I think the main thrust is to be honest. Say, here are my views. I'm in favor of universal medical care, the way they have in every other country in the world. I'm not in favor of paying twice as much for worse care in accord with our system. I think working people should have the right to actually to even control the workplace, certainly to have a major factor in determining the way it functions. There are traditional movements that have worked for these ends. Here's what social democracy, anarchism, others. So here's the terms, here's the ideas. You don't like the terms, pick different terms. If you don't like calling Nick Sanders' programs, which are really pretty conservative if you look at them, you can add his main programs were universal health care, free higher education, things which are absolutely standard in other countries, rich and poor. So much so that outside the United States, people even wonder what's the fuss about. So you can come out in favor of these and say, this is mild social democracy, socialist in the weak sense, or it's New Deal liberalism. Use whatever term you want. These are the policies. How you go on to proceed depends again on your audience. If it's an audience that wants deeper background, deeper understanding of what's involved, then clarify the notions. Here's what socialism has been. These are its driving features in the past. Here's what the anarchist movement has been. Here are its driving ideas and ideals and actions. And you can go on to develop that. But I don't think you can't give a general answer that's independent of who you're trying to talk to.
May I clarify? I'm not American. I'm German. So let's say I was attempting, because I heard your statement that you think socialism is like being a democrat here, and I would disagree with that. At least not in Germany. It's certainly easier, but it's still kind of a radical idea. So let's say I'm talking to your average right-wing centrist in Germany. So that would be a Christian, generally opposed to market intervention, but fine with a little bit, and definitely opposed to government control, and still very scared of the term socialism. What would be my ideal approach?
Let's take Germany. Actually, a very fine columnist, Rana Forahar, who's the associate editor of the London Financial Times, world's major business journal, recently commented on this. He pointed out, slightly in jest, but not very much, that if Bernie Sanders was in Germany, he could be running on the Christian Democrat program. That's correct. He could be running on the right-wing program in Germany. They're in favor of universal health care. They're in favor of free higher education. They're in favor of other government actions of the kind that are taken out within the pretty conservative German so-called ordo-liberal, it's a kind of neoliberal framework of workers on boards of management, for example. Christian Democrats aren't opposed to that. So it's actually the case that the Sanders programs are fairly centered by the standards of other developed societies. Now, the United States has quite progressive aspects in its culture and society. Many, not in these areas. In these areas, it's very backward. You look at our analyses of the OECD countries, the roughly 30 richest countries, social justice analyses. US ranks right at the bottom, along with Mexico and Turkey in general social justice, with the much poorer members of the OECD. And I should say, with regard to what I just mentioned, Mexico is way ahead of us. They have universal health care, they have free higher education. It's a very poor country, lots of problems. So it's not at the standards we'd like to see. It's there. So there are respects in which the United States is quite backward. There are other respects in which it is in the lead in defending very decent principles. Freedom of speech, for example, is protected in the United States, not perfectly, but to an extent well beyond other comparable societies.
All right, thanks.
Thank
Happy
you for
holidays.
that.
By the way, happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays. Thank you for that question. The next question, starting a little bit of a foreign policy and history arc, comes from Soyuz.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello, Noam Chomsky. I have a question that I'm sorry. I have a question about Morocco. Recently in Morocco, there have been a lot of protests, and a lot of them were both against the monarchy and against the way a lot of the companies in Morocco actually run. And these protests go by the name of RIF protests. They've been advocating for two main things: a more democratic republic style of government, similar to like European representative democracy, instead of a constitutional monarchy where the king does most of the work, like in Morocco, and where the king can appoint ministers as he chooses, as he wishes. And the number two thing that they really want to implement in the Kingdom of Morocco is for representative democracy in larger corporations. Because recently, a few years ago, a few months ago, but it's still going on, in Tanja, there were protests with thousands of people who could no longer afford their electricity because the companies, Jesus, because the companies that were tasked in Morocco to actually deliver this electricity and deliver the water and deliver the gas pumped up the price of gas, water, and electricity 10 times, tenfold. It went from $12 per month to $120 per month, and people protested on the street because they could no longer afford their stuff. So people want to implement representative democracy within corporations as well, similar to the Spanish company of Mondragon, which has recently been doing good in the market and has a high level of worker happiness. Do you think this is a good way of progressing in Morocco? And if not, what other way of progressing do you think would be a better idea?
Sorry, but I didn't really catch the gist of the question.
Okay, I guess
So
I
why don't you re-ask that in one sentence?
All right. A lot of the people in Morocco want to have two main reforms. One, change the system of government to a representative democracy similar to Europe. And two, adding representative democracy within larger corporations. Sort of like a co-op, but you have like representative democracy instead. So similar to the Spanish company of Mondragon. Do you think this would be a good way of stepping forward for the Moroccan people, stepping away from Moroccan monarchism to Moroccan democracy? Or do you think that this is not a good way?
Are you speaking about democracy within business enterprises like corporations? Well, I don't see any reason why we should accept authoritarian, tyrannical structures anywhere. I don't see any reason why people should spend most of their waking lives in circumstances that are more under more authoritarian control than even in the most tyrannical states. So Stalin was a brutal tyrant, but he couldn't tell you that you're allowed to go to the bathroom for 5 minutes at 3 p.m. And here are the clothes you have to wear, and here are the number of packages you have to move from one place to another on the route that I described for you within a fixed amount of time. That kind of total control of your life holds only within business enterprises, not in totalitarian states. I don't see any reason why we should accept that. I think people should be in control of their own workplaces democratically as they are in other parts of life, as we hope they are, as we would like them to be. Hard to call this a radical position. This was the position of the Republican Party under Abraham Lincoln, who regarded working for a master as an intolerable attack on human rights and dignity, described wage labor as different from slavery only in that it was temporary, that you could control your own life again. The position of the overwhelming majority of the American working class in the early years of the Industrial Revolution was the position of the major labor union in American history, Knights of Labor. Very powerful, important movement in the late 19th century, integrated black and white, worked in the most repressed black areas, organizing. Calling slogan was those who work in the mills should own them and manage them. I think that's an ideal towards which we should strive. We're not going to get it in one fell swoop. It can begin with what does exist in other countries, like Germany, co-determination, worker representatives on management boards. That's a first step. Actually been advocated by Elizabeth Warren, Sanders, others. It's a very first step, can move well beyond. I think those are long-term goals that we should strive for. We can describe them in various ways. We can say, this is the going back to earlier questions, we can say these are the fundamental principles of the genuine socialist movement, not what's called socialism, and of the anarchist movements. Or we could say what I just did. These were the positions of the Republican Party under Abraham Lincoln and the positions of major working class organizations in the United States. I think both are correct. And when we're talking to people who are interested in gaining a deeper background and understanding, that's the way we should present it.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Professor Chomsky.
Noon and get off
we
to
can
the
move
next.
on now. Sorry, what?
So I'm afraid I'll have to leave you now.
Oh, you that's all the time you have? Okay. That's fine. Well, we appreciate you joining us today and answering questions.
Yeah.
It's been an honor to have you. Socialism done left. Do you want to say anything else before we close out here?
Just wanted to say it's been an honor to have you. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you very much. Sorry I have to leave so soon.
Oh, it's
Of course.
fine. It's
Have a wonderful
been an
day.
honor, Mr. Chomsky. Thank you. Okay. So I think that went really well. It was a little shorter than expected, but that's fine.
Yeah, I think we were
gonna-
planning for 2 hours, but that's why some of your questions didn't get asked. Sorry, but
That was
Yeah, the thing is, like, I was hoping to go for 2 hours, but
Yep.
we tried to like clarify that with him before the evening started, but we didn't get to, so we weren't sure exactly how much time he had. He didn't mention. So,
it's okay. I'll just take over the AMA. I'll finish most of the questions.
Right, I'm going to bounce. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to broadcast this. All the best to all of you, and happy holidays. Okay.
Happy holidays.
Thanks. Cheers. Bye.
Yes.
Get out of here, Chud.
All right. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, I guess, open up the channel so people can like
Be
speak if they
careful.
want to.
You're gonna open the floodgates. You're gonna open the floodgates in a bit.
Yeah.
Just be careful who you unmute, okay? We have a few fascists in the server, so like